Well, I've been very fascinated to learn that these cable cars started to be built towards the end of 1890. And the chapel car that came to Fort Lupton was actually built in 1893. The cable car was called Emmanuel, and it was one of 6 that the American Baptists had purchased. And so these cars would go to small towns that didn't have churches or were just starting, Christian people getting together. And they would stay a while and help build the new churches and then go to another one and to another one. And in information for Emmanuel was that it came to Fort Lupton in March of 1921.
Name is Ron Schuyler. Been in this church probably since the first week I was born. My cousin and I, Wayne Schuyler, were baptized on the same day, and I think he was 10 years old and I think I was 7. My grandmother, Mabel Malone Pendle, was the first person involved in the church. In fact, she was here before there was a church, and I believe it was called Chapel Car Grace. And she and my grandfather and my 1-year-old mother came here from Posey County, Indiana, which is the most southwestern county in Indiana. It's my understanding that the car went from town to town, and when it got to a town, it was put on a siding, and church was held in the car. So we've all had families here about 100 years.
Yes, I'm Bob Warner. I grew up out northeast Fort Lupton in the four-way area on a farm, and we raised crops and had pasture and raised cattle. We moved to town when my oldest brother got married back around 1953. We moved to town over on South Park Avenue, and then we became more active. I was a member of this church all along, but we became more active at that time in the church. The First Baptist Church has been a big part of our life, and it's been very meaningful to all of our family.
Well, we were so fortunate that we could, the church grew in numbers. They actually had to buy a neighboring house, and then another house was bequeathed to them, so they did have more Sunday school room. But it was 1943 when the upper schedule, I think I told you that. So there were 3 men, and it was actually John Martin, J. Lee Sears, and my husband, who went to the leadership of the church and asked them if we couldn't start a building fund, and they authorized them to have an auction. People could give whatever they wanted that could be sold, and it was quite successful for that time. But they went to the leadership then again and said, let's buy a piece of ground. And the leadership said, that's fine, but you've got to have $10,000, I think it was, to purchase a spot. And it wouldn't, and they did get it. And that was at Raleigh, and it would be Highway 52 now.
Now, for people who don't know, all of the activities for building the new building were quite intense. Some people wanted to, other people didn't want to, and where were we going to get the money, and so on and so forth. But one of the driving forces behind that was a guy named Johnny Martin and his wife Claire Lee. They were fantastic people, but Johnny Martin had the abilities to get people together. And once it was kind of decided that yes, we needed a new church, Johnny was fantastic at pulling people together so that everybody felt like we needed a new church building, excuse me. And he was kind of the leader on that. And I know also that he put a lot of money into this church, as did, we just talked to Bob Warner, and Bob Warner's folks did the same thing. Bill Bell and his family did, J. Lee Sears and his family. We scraped and got it together, and we look back and think, gosh, why did we design it this way here? We should have done it that way, but second guessing is always 99% right, It was quite an experience.
We had a vote in the old church about the process. There was one dissenter, and I feel quite certain that I know that this man felt like he couldn't participate because of his employment, and he was getting older and wouldn't have that opportunity. But he and his wife paid off the last of the $100,000. And he was up on the roof building almost every day with the others.
My name's Ken Harnett. I've been a member of this church for 21 years. At one time, the age of our membership became older and more people were homebound. The Sunday attendance declined. The average number on Sundays got cleaned down to about 30 on a Sunday. So the elders, and I was one of those at the time, and the pastor shared with the congregation that we needed to pray fervently and trust God that if He wanted to keep this church open.
I'm Matt Manning, the senior pastor here at Crossroads Church, and when we first merged with Fort Lupton, it was all the way back in 2011. And the story is kind of a cool story. Earlier that year, probably around February or March of that year, we had begun praying that God would lead us to a third campus, that God had placed on Pastor Kim, the senior pastor at that time's heart, that it was time to expand what we were doing and look for a third campus. And one of the cool things that we were praying for actually is that this church would be in the I-76 corridor, that when we were led to pray, when God was showing us, that seemed to be the space that we were praying for. And so one day, one of our members of the church let us know that there was a building that used to be a church, kind of right at Bridge there in Brighton, and that we should go check it out. And so we called the realtor, and Kim, myself, and Ryan Wergler, who was our moderator at the time, went to that church to meet the realtor so that we could walk through. At that point, it was like a Buddhist temple. And so we got there, and sadly, the realtor never showed up. And so we were kind of like peeking in the windows and being total creepers around this building, seeing if it would work for us. And while we were sitting there, a man named David Graves, who was the pastor of Fort Lupton, First Baptist of Fort Lupton at the time, gave Kim a call, and asked if he could meet with Kim.
Well, our pastor at the time was Pastor David Graves, and God soon after that put an idea in his mind. He made a contact with Pastor Kim Scadam of Crossroads Church in North Glen. And that connection began to blossom, and more meetings were held. And it was so happened that Crossroads was looking for a third site for a third campus.
And David Graves looked at Kim and said, my leadership knows I'm here, but I'm not really here officially, but I want to talk to you about what would it look like to become one of your satellite churches. Kim was totally blown away by this. And he asked David, he said, well, what does that look like for you guys? And he goes, well, it means that we would give you the keys to the church. And Kim goes, well, what would you get in return? And he said, a chance at life.
And man, you talk about God working. He timed all that such in a perfect way that none of us could ever orchestrate it, but God orchestrated it. And after several meetings and discussions with the leaders of both churches, our church became officially part of Crossroads in January 1st of 2012.
Well, the beautiful part of the coming together with Crossroads are the new friends we made. A lot of friends from Brighton and the surrounding area, Tacoma and Frederick. It's just brought so much to the Fort Lupton Church.
In 2013, I had the opportunity actually to become the campus pastor here at Fort Lupton. And one of the super cool events that happened at Fort Lupton regularly was the Thanksgiving dinner that we served. And that year, as we got together thinking about how we would serve Thanksgiving and do Thanksgiving as a church, one of the ideas that one of the members came up with was to actually invite the whole community to be a part of it. And so that year, I think we had a ton of turkey and all of this food, and we had invited the community, and several of the homeless community showed up to the church to participate in that church family Thanksgiving meal. And I just sat back and watched, and I'll never forget that day of watching the church so tenderly take care of these people who were not regular attenders at Crossroads, who certainly were not part of the family, quote unquote, of Crossroads. They were people who heard that there was a Thanksgiving meal. They weren't going to have one, and they wanted to participate in that. And so they came to Fort Lupton, and the people here at Fort Lupton just totally opened their arms to that. That was one of the highlights that I had here at Crossroads.
One of the wonderful highlights we have here at our church has probably been here since 2006 or 7 is our food bank. And after we merged with Crossroads, we got some assistance from one of the ladies at the other campus about how to better operate it and make it bigger. And so we have a designated space in the room for it with a lot of racks of food. And a couple years ago, we got donations, and we got a big, large freezer and a large cooler. And we, before the pandemic, before the COVID-19 pandemic, we would average like 30 people every week. And we've always been open every week. The only week during the year that we're not open is when we have our large Vacation Bible School right here, because we just so full of kids and all the volunteers. But other than that, we also do, within the food bank, we do a Thanksgiving boxes that we hand out, special turkeys and additional food, as well as a Christmas box that we hand out. Well, I would like God to continue to use the people that we have here, including more members I hope to come, but to just continue to connect with the community. Because the more that we as a church can connect with the community, because the church isn't just behind these walls, the church is us going out and being a part and connected with the community.
And as I think about the future and as we cross the 100 years here, my prayer is for another 100 years of great ministry in this town. And part of that looks like relaunching Fort Lupton as their own church, to continue to grow and to do the things that this city needs in ways to bringing the gospel and to bringing the hope of Jesus. And as I look back over the 10 years that we've shared together in this history, one of the really cool things is the people that God has brought into it, the staff members who are now here, and the way that the staff and the people have worked together in such a way to bring this place into a space of real health, of where the gospel is proclaimed, where people are saved. I mean, just a few weeks ago, we participated in a youth service where 4 people were baptized, proclaiming the name of Jesus. And my hopes and dreams as I see the future of Fort Lupton is for that to only continue and to even increase as God makes his way into this town even more fully in the next 100 years than he did these last 100.